Please help me. I'm going to freeze if it stays like this. As the snow began to fall early in the morning and gradually turned into a full-blown snowstorm, occasionally impairing visibility, suddenly, the front door opened. There stood my 7-year-old niece, Allie. She was on her way to an amusement park with her family and had stopped at a convenience store. It was Allie's mother, my sister Emily, who suggested the stop. Allie, who was sent on an errand, went to the rendezvous point only to find no car. After waiting for a while with no one coming to pick her up, she walked all the way here. Allie said she had a letter for us and handed it over. Upon reading it, I was furious and stormed into the government office just before closing time. As a result, Emily's misdeeds became publicly known. I'm the older of 2 sisters. Emily is married, has her own family, and lives elsewhere. I married later than Emily and lived with our parents until adulthood. Later, I married a man. He is the youngest of 3 brothers, and he agreed to join our family. My parents were thrilled to welcome my husband, and I took over the family responsibilities. However, it's not like we have ancestral heirlooms to pass down. If anything, it's just the land and the house, which we didn't want to sell in our parents' generation, so I decided to take over. That's all there is to it. Our family home, passed down through generations, is just an old house with its age being its only claim to fame. It's been renovated and earthquake-proofed, so it's not fragile despite its age. But Emily hated this old house, and as soon as she graduated high school, she left to live on her own. In fact, she left because she didn't like our parents' treatment of her. Both parents had distinct features, especially our father, who had a very un-Japanese appearance. Emily inherited all of their good looks, a real beauty, while I looked so plain and typically Japanese that it's hard to believe I'm their child. If I had only been less attractive than Emily, she might not have been so dissatisfied. Our mother, a former flight attendant, was fluent in several languages. Our father, once a researcher at a university, was always top of his class and very inquisitive. Emily inherited these traits too, excelling academically and athletically. I, on the other hand, was average in studies and not great at sports, always finishing near the back in races. Our parents never favored one of us over the other, loving us equally. They didn't differentiate in birthday presents or allowances, and never favored Emily alone. She didn't like this at all. However, relatives and Emily's friends doted on her and spoiled her. She grew up believing that being beautiful and talented meant she could do no wrong. After high school, Emily left home to live independently, fell in love with a man she met at a part-time job, and married him right after graduating from college. She then had 2 children, a nephew and Allie. My marriage happened sometime after Emily had her children. Emily, who mocked me for thinking I could never get married, asked sarcastically how much I paid to bribe my husband when I did get engaged. To her, I seemed like a woman who couldn't attract a man without money. Emily, who left home calling it an old-fashioned house, started showing up again after having kids. She said it was because she could lean on us without restraint, especially pushing her daughter, Allie, onto our parents and me. Our parents loved both their grandchildren, Allie and her brother, equally, without any favoritism. I too treated Allie and her brother the same, but it seemed like her brother didn't like that. "Hey, could you please stop neglecting my son?" Emily complained, suggesting that her son felt he wasn't as loved by our parents or me, with all the attention seemingly going to Allie. But as far as I and our parents were concerned, we treated them both equally and never intentionally left her son out. "I don't care about the girl. Just favor my son," Emily insisted. We asked back, "What do you mean?" But my sister was adamant about only one thing, to dote on her nephew no matter what. We were baffled by this demand and couldn't fathom favoring one child over the other without a clear reason, so we continued treating both children equally whenever Emily brought them over. However, her son started visiting less and less, apparently dissatisfied that we didn't change our attitude towards him despite his complaints to Emily. I had been concerned about his attitude towards Allie even before he stopped coming. There was a noticeable difference in their clothing, and despite eating the same meals, their development seemed quite different. Considering Allie's age, she should be developing faster than a boy, yet she looked less nourished. When her brother refused to come to our house, Emily and Allie also stopped showing up. One day, my mother had some business with Emily and went to her house. What she saw there was shocking. After finishing her business, my mother asked Emily if she could give Allie and her brother some gifts she had brought for them. Emily said they were in their room, so my mother went there and found Allie's brother making her kneel and hitting her with a stick. My mother intervened, taking the stick and protecting Allie. To this, her brother complained that my mother was interrupting his discipline. When Emily appeared, she nonchalantly said it was normal for siblings. My mother, seeing that this was beyond typical sibling rivalry, scolded Emily severely. Emily, looking displeased, explained the reason behind her actions. Her son had tried to swap his old backpack with Allie's new one, but she had refused. So, he wanted to make her understand her place, hence his actions. Emily then sided with her son, demanding Allie give her new backpack to him. When my mother tried to intervene, Emily told her to leave as her business was done. This incident worried my mother, who later ambushed Allie on her way home from school. She found Allie wearing her brother's old backpack, which was a year old. And her clothes were dirty and torn. There were several bruises on her arms and legs. Allie, apparently scared, quickly walked away when my mother spoke to her. It seemed Emily had threatened her with more harm if she secretly met with my mother. I decided to help Allie. My mother mentioned that Emily's husband also seemed to favor their son, leaving Allie without a place in their home. I pretended to bump into Allie on her way back from school and asked her to help me with shopping at a nearby store. She hadn't been told not to talk to me and happily agreed when I approached her. I planned to treat her to something nice after helping with my shopping, suspecting Emily would accuse me of favoring Allie. But considering Emily and her husband's treatment, it seemed they were the ones showing a lack of affection. I thought as long as I framed it as a reward for helping, Emily wouldn't make too much of a fuss. And if her brother wanted to join in, that would be fine too. After finishing our shopping, we received a few year-end lottery tickets. I had already done some shopping earlier, so I had a fair number of tickets. I offered them all to Allie, my niece, but she hesitated, wanting to split them. Thinking I could give her any prize I won, we both participated in the draw. Unfortunately, Allie didn't win anything, but I managed to get a pair of amusement park tickets. I gave them to Allie, swapping them for the pocket tissues she got from her losing tickets. At first, she was reluctant, but when I insisted it was a thank you for her help, she gratefully accepted with a thank you. Since I had already used the thank you gesture for the lottery, I couldn't use it to treat her to snacks. So, I took some deli bread from our shopping as another token of gratitude. It was the least I could do to feed her without making her feel awkward. When I asked if she would help me again, she nodded, so I made plans to occasionally meet her after school to ease her hunger. However, with school closed for winter break, I couldn't see her. And kept worrying about whether she was staying warm. A month had passed since I gave her the amusement park tickets, and 3 days into the winter break. It was unusually cold this morning, with light snowfall. That started early, according to my mother. My husband and I had planned to go shopping with the family during his year-end break, but we postponed it due to the heavy snowfall and increased risk of accidents. Watching out the window, the large snowflakes started to accumulate in the garden. We decided to clear the snow from the front entrance. When I opened the door, there was Allie, shivering at the gate. Her lips purple and a light dusting of snow on her head and shoulders. I wondered how long she had been there. Rushing outside, I pulled Allie in. I called my parents and husband to heat the room more. And asked for blankets and a change of clothes, holding the freezing Allie. They were all shocked and bombarded her with questions like what happened, and did you come alone? After my mother gave her some hot water, Allie calmed down a bit and started explaining. She had planned to go to the amusement park with her family using the tickets I gave her. Emily, her mother, had been unusually kind to her since the winter break began. Today, they left home in high spirits, with Emily's husband driving. They stopped at a convenience store near our house. At the store, Emily asked Allie to drop a letter in our mailbox while they shopped. Allie followed her instructions, but when she returned to the convenience store, the car was gone. She waited, hoping they would come back, but as the snowflakes got bigger and the cold intensified, she decided to return to our house. She didn't come in, fearing she might be a nuisance if she showed up unannounced. Unable to make the long trip back to Emily's house, she was contemplating what to do when I came out. Hearing her story, we were furious with Emily like never before. And doubted the sanity of her husband and son for not stopping her actions. Even if siblings don't get along, anyone should know the consequences of leaving someone out in the cold on such a freezing day. It could have been life-threatening, not something to dismiss as a mere prank. I struggled to accept the reality that Emily could do something so foolish. Maybe the letter Emily had sent had some unavoidable reasons written in it. "Is the letter still in the mailbox?" I asked, and Allie nodded. My husband went out to check and came back with a brown envelope. I asked Allie if this was the letter, and she nodded again. I exchanged glances with my parents. It was unlikely that Emily would write to me, so it was probably for them. But then, thinking calmly, Emily isn't the type to write letters. As I was warming up Allie, my mother read the letter from Emily. It was full of complaints about how we dote on Allie. It mentioned how I took Allie shopping as a reward for her help, giving her snacks and light meals, and accused us of excluding her brother. "I thought helping you with shopping was a good thing, but Mom and my brother think it's unfair that only I get special treatment from you." Apparently, her brother saw us shopping together. The letter continued with insults towards Allie. It was calling her a terrible kid for not respecting her brother. It described her as whiny, unattractive, always dirty and poor, a child not worth having. It ended with, "You seem to like this worthless niece of mine, so take her and do whatever you want." I felt only disgust for Emily, treating her own child like garbage. The thought of sharing the same blood with Emily made me nauseous. Still, I knew what I had to do. Leaving Allie, who was still not fully warmed up, with my parents, my husband and I headed to the government office. It was the end of the year, and the office might close soon, so I couldn't delay this matter until next year. Clutching Emily's letter, I asked at the reception where to report child abuse. I was quickly directed to the right office, where I discussed the treatment Allie had received at Emily's house, as witnessed by my mother and what I had observed in the past month. I mentioned Allie's small, thin frame, possible signs of insufficient food, bruises on her body, and the contents of Emily's letter, which clearly indicated child neglect. The office immediately informed the Child Welfare Services. We were told to wait for their response and returned home. We were advised to respect Allie's wishes regarding her situation. Given the letter's content, it's unlikely Emily would come to take her back, and there was a low chance of her accusing us of taking Allie without permission. However, we were warned that Emily's behavior in the letter was a serious deviation from parental responsibilities. I doubted Allie would want to return home, but I still checked with her. As expected, she didn't want to go back. We tried contacting Emily, but she didn't answer, so we decided to take care of Allie at our house. That afternoon, a representative from Child Welfare Services came for an interview with my husband, my parents, and Allie. We discussed what Allie wanted, what we wanted for her, and shared our innermost thoughts, something we had never done before as a family. Then, on New Year's Eve, an angry call from Emily reached our home. "Why did Child Services come to my house? Why are you doing things without asking me? If you wanted to keep her, you should have just done it quietly. If you don't want her, you could have just left her somewhere. Keep her? Leave her somewhere? What do you think a child's life is? Leaving a child out in the cold on such a day, we could have reported you to the police, you know?" Emily screamed into the phone, calling me a monster and accusing me of having no right to an opinion. My mother stepped in and turned on the speakerphone. As Emily's complaints echoed through the phone, my father and husband stopped what they were doing. We all listened to her selfish claims. Emily was surprised and panicked by the sudden visit from Child Services in the early morning. At first, she tried to bluff, saying Allie had just gone back to our house, but as she was asked for more details, she couldn't answer and inadvertently revealed her true feelings. Trying to justify her actions, the more she made excuses, the more she dug herself into a hole, and her actions were deemed complete abandonment. "If you hadn't interfered, my plan would have been a total success. There's no way I, the brilliant one, could make a mistake. It's because of your stupidity that my perfect plan was ruined." She ranted irrationally. My father, unusually, yelled at her to stop her nonsensical shouting, and then Emily declared she would sue us for defamation. My husband, parents, and I all replied in unison, "Go ahead, try it if you can," to which Emily retorted with a dismissive comment and hung up. After the new year, we met with the lawyer my parents hired, along with Child Services, to discuss Allie's situation. We agreed it was best to have our thoughts in order before talking to Emily. My husband and I, having no children of our own, were open to adopting Allie if she agreed. Allie strongly did not want to return to Emily and seemed relieved to hear she wouldn't have to live with her anymore. It's sad that not living with her biological mother made her happy. I felt a strong desire to show Allie all the love she deserved. Allie had several options: living with us or her in-laws, going to a foster home, or being adopted by us. Without hesitation, she said she wanted to stay with us. After discussions with the lawyer, it was settled that Allie would be adopted by us. Emily, who wanted to get rid of Allie, wasn't likely to oppose the adoption. Her brother, being favored by Emily and her husband, strongly refused to be adopted by us. We only asked as a formality, knowing he would refuse. The reason we asked that was to avoid any claims of favoritism later. Allie was relieved she wouldn't have to see her brother, who had been harassing her. After the discussions, Emily stopped the lawyer.
"Wait, I'll hire you to sue my sister for defamation."
The lawyer, who had remained calm throughout, scoffed at her request. He said, even the best lawyer couldn't fulfill such a wish. Emily was fuming, but we decided it was a waste of time to engage with her and left. It would be great if she learned from this experience that not everyone will pamper a beautiful person like her, but expecting that from Emily seemed difficult. I had a feeling that Emily's unpredictable behavior was far from over. And indeed, my hunch was right. With Allie gone and her adored son remaining, Emily pampered him even more. However, Emily's treatment of the children became known to her in-laws. Although they were a bit unusual, they were more sensible than Emily, and very concerned about their public image. Learning about Emily's actions, they took her son away from her, unable to leave their grandson with such a mother. Emily's in-laws practically worshipped her husband, being staunch supporters of him. However, that didn't mean they spoiled him or neglected his upbringing. They raised him to be a gentleman who wouldn't embarrass them anywhere, someone who excelled in academics, sports, and was adored by people of all ages. Yet, he didn't stop Emily's extreme actions, possibly due to his own internal conflict. He had doubts about Allie's paternity since she was born. Before Allie's conception, Emily's husband had been on a solo assignment overseas for several months. It was supposed to be just for a year, so he left his family behind. During that time, Emily cheated with a younger man and got pregnant. When her husband returned from his assignment, Emily suddenly announced her pregnancy after insisting on resuming their marital life. He had his suspicions but thought he could love the child once it was born. However, as Allie grew up, she didn't resemble either Emily or her husband, making it increasingly difficult for him to feel affection for her. Lacking the courage to act, he indirectly allowed Emily and their son to mistreat Allie. The recent incident led to an official DNA test, confirming his suspicions. Allie was not his biological daughter. Despite this, it didn't excuse his treatment of Allie. Upon learning this, Emily's in-laws, despite their admiration for their son, criticized him severely. They also blamed him for leaving the parenting solely to Emily, resulting in their son being raised spoiled and lacking a sense of right and wrong. They took stern action, re-educating him and their grandson on proper behavior and morals. Hearing this, Emily's husband realized that his life had been marred by his association with Emily and informed her of his decision to divorce. He also sought compensation for her infidelity during his time abroad. Emily, ever prideful, claimed she had graciously granted the divorce and returned to her parents' house. She was boasting about paying the paltry alimony in one go. However, my parents only listened at the door and did not let her inside. Instead, my husband, parents, and I unanimously decided to keep her out.
Are you all heartless? I'm a beautiful and brilliant daughter returning home, and this is how you treat me? There's nothing good about making my ordinary sister the heir.
She started demanding that she will remarry and have a worthy heir, so recognize her as the successor. She even insulted me for not having been pregnant once in my marriage, calling me defective and a disgrace to womanhood. She repeatedly called out for Allie, who appeared at the window. When Allie saw her mother pleading for help, Allie firmly said,
"My family now is my new dad, mom, and grandparents. I don't know you. I'm not supposed to talk to strangers, as they taught us in school. Please, don't come here anymore."
My father and husband threw salt at Emily, a gesture of warding off evil. A crowd gathered, and those who had known and pampered Emily started murmuring. She left her child alone, in the snow, no less, and the child was living without proper meals. Emily, despite her beauty, was met with cold stares and comments about her ugly personality. She eventually left, unable to bear the public shaming. Later, Emily was forced to start working to pay child support to her ex-husband and in-laws. Her ex-husband and in-laws showed no mercy in demanding the payments, leaving her struggling to maintain even her own livelihood. She resorted to using her beauty to charm men for money, but her schemes led her into dangerous situations. We decided to stay uninvolved with Emily's life from then on. Meanwhile, Allie began to recover from her past traumas in our home, smiling more and sharing stories about school. Changing schools, due to the different districts between our home and Emily's, might have been a blessing in disguise for her. 6 months after becoming our adopted daughter, I discovered I was pregnant. The doctor attributed to reduced stress. It seemed Emily had been nothing but a bad omen in my life. Our home became filled with joy and laughter with the news of the pregnancy. Allie was thrilled at the prospect of having a sibling. Eager to be a proud big sister. We vowed to create a safe and loving home for Allie and our new child.